All right, here's our second video about HTML. This time we're going to go into this, an idea called nested tags. And we saw a little bit of this last time when I wrote a paragraph and said something like, I'd like to visit a pizza farm, and I've got my, typo. I've got my tags, paragraph tags surrounding this, and then inside my paragraph, I've put another pair of tags around one of these words here. Let's just do it kind of in the middle. Doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense, but let's run it like that. I'd like to visit a pizza farm. Maybe not own one, but visit one. This M tag in here is nested inside the paragraph tag. This is the term we use for this, nested. And it's this concept of nesting is important because if we saw this like at say that we didn't put it in the middle, but we put it at the end. I'd like to visit a pizza farm. I can run that. I don't want to visit a pizza shop. I want to visit a pizza farm. I could easily have put my closing M tag out after the paragraph tag. And this messes up the nesting, right? And so HTML, it's actually more than a little. It's pretty forgiving language. Like you can mess up a lot of things and it's going to try its best to display it on the page for you. So I can run this and the browser is taking its best guess of what I'm trying to do, and it was fine. That's a good enough guess. But this is not considered well-formed HTML, and that's the phrase that we'll use in computing. This is not well-formed code. So we want to keep the M tag nested inside the paragraph because the paragraph is the big thing here, and the emphasis is just on one small piece inside the paragraph. So we're gonna close this M tag before we close the paragraph tag. Okay, so that's the idea of nested tags applied to the text-based tagging that we did in the last video. I'd like to introduce you to a couple more tags now, and where the nesting becomes maybe a little more natural than this kind of contrived example that I have up here. So I'm going to start a new paragraph and say, here's what I expect to see there. Have you ever been to a pizza farm? I've never been to a pizza farm. In fact, I didn't even know they existed before I stumbled on them in Wikipedia. Here's what I expect to see there. And then I'd like to list the things that I think I might see at a pizza farm. So I run my two paragraphs, and I can make a list of things in HTML with a tag called UL, which is short for unordered list. So UL means unordered list. I'll do my opening tag, and since it's a list, I'm actually going to go down here a little ways to do my closing tag for the unordered list. And then each item in the list gets its own tag. And so the UL opening and closing represents the entire list, but the list is composed of list items. And so those I'm going to use the LI tag for. And what might we see at a pizza farm? There'll be probably pepperoni plants, where we get pepperoni from. Yep. And then what else might I see there? A tomato sauce, this isn't spelling class. Tomato sauce plant. I almost did a P with an LI. And so now I have two list items. And notice how each of these list items is nested inside the entire list tag. So this is an idea of nesting that is a little more natural than what we had up above. And I think it works, right? When you think about it, how the LI has to open and close in between the UL opening and closing tags there. Now, we could nest as many times as we want here. Like, let's say, and then another thing I'm going to do is there'll be, topping plants. Many different types of toppings plants. And I'll even put here, many types of toppings plants. And get a little funky line wrap there. And I kind of use that awkward phrasing because now I want to do another list, sort of a indented list, listing out the different types of topping plants I might find here. And so I'm going to, remember, blank lines here don't mean anything to the computer. They're just for humans. So I'm going to put in a bunch of blank lines and in here do another list. Oh, see, look what Replit tried to do here. It thought that I wanted to close that last tag. So I typed UL, but then it changed it to a closing UL. And so I'm going to kind of override that and come in and do my closing UL here. And then inside here, what are some toppings plants we might find? There would be mushrooms. That's a good topping. There might be an anchovy. I don't know how to spell anchovy. Anchovy, not farm, maybe pond, an anchovy pond. And then a pineapple tree. So let's run this and see how this looks. Why don't you predict in your head what this is going to look like? Okay, now when I run it, I have a list that's embedded inside this other list, and the browser knows that when you put one list inside of another list, you probably want that indent sort of happening in there. And notice none of that, like this isn't indented anymore inside the code here. Again, the spacing doesn't matter in my code. What matters is the spacing over here is just for humans, the code writers. The browser interprets it as a bunch of nesting happening here. So I've got my UL, let's just sort of look broadly here. I've got my large UL tag that closes down here. And inside this outer unordered list tag, how many HTML elements do I have? I could count them as 1, 2, 3 list items and one other list. And then inside that other list, I have 3 list elements. And notice in the in Replit here, when I move my mouse over this gutter on here by the line numbers, I see a minus sign pop up. And what that can do is collapse the list for me. And when I click it, it hides lines 9, 10, and 11, represents them with just a little 3 dots there, to clean up just visually my code a little bit. That's still there, right? I can run it and it's fine. It's just hiding them temporarily, and I can click the plus to make them come back or the 3 dots to make them come back. What do you think is going to happen if I close this first UL tag? What's going to be hidden? Is this going to hide lines 4, 5, and 6 only? Or is it going to hide lines 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13? Let's see. I'm going to click that to minus, and it hides all of them. Again, honoring the nesting that I have here, where this outer UL opening tag corresponds to the very last UL closing tag, and I can plus that up and plus that up to open those back up again. So nesting is an important concept here. Notice that the indenting here too, there was a little bit of auto indenting that happened, and the indenting again sort of provides some clarity to the human who's writing the code here. So I've got my UL and then my LI indents, another UL, and then some LIs indented, just to show that they're kind of part of the UL. So when we nest tags, often we'll indent them to show the sort of the order of the nesting. So lists is one way where we indent, where we where we do nested tags. There's one other example of nested tags that I'd like to show you, and that is the idea of an image link. So you can see down on our list here, on our nested tags video that we're on right now, we're looking at lists and also image links. So an image link would be like a image on the page that you can click on, and when you click on it, it goes somewhere else, right? So let's do that here. Now, you may remember from the last video, I grabbed this kind of random Wikimedia picture, and I'm going to put that back in here underneath the list, image src equals quotes, paste in there, and then image is a self-closing tag, so I just do that. I don't need the actual closing tag for the image. When I run it, I see the image there as I expected, which is cool. But nothing happens, it's just there. What if I made that link clickable? So that when I click on this, it actually takes me to, say, just like the page where I found it, which was back here. Whoa. Wikimedia is a collaboration and documentation platform brought to you by a vibrant community. And here's this picture. So let's make this be the target of the picture here. So that means when I click on the picture, it should take me to this full page that contains the picture, kind of like a Google image search, right? And so think about how we might want to go about doing this. You actually already know the skills you need in order to make this happen. Yeah, we're going to combine one of the tags we learned in the last video with this idea of nesting here. So we can put this image link inside of an A tag. So there's my A opening, and the closing tag should be after the image. There's my A closing tag, and I'm just going to put some line breaks there to make it visually a little better. And then remember, an A opening tag always has to have an attribute to say what the target of the click action is. So when I click, where do I want the browser to go? And that's the href attribute. The name of the attribute is href, and the value is the URL that you would like to direct the user to. And so when I run this now, here's my picture, and when I move my mouse over it, it turns into the little pointer mouse, which means that it's behaving like a link, and when I click it, it redirects me to the Wikimedia page. That's handy. Okay, so let's run this again. And so to get my code back here. Now that I'm here and we saw that Wikimedia page pop up inside this sort of cramped space here, I want to show you one more thing about Replit, which is handy. I mentioned in the last video that this is a real web page, and here's the link to your web page. I have it highlighted right here. If you click this little icon with the arrow shooting out of a box, can I get my angles right? Shooting out of a box. That will open up your web page in a new tab. Here's the link to your web page. This is what you can send to your grandmother. And she can go on to an internet enabled computer in Southern California right now and open up your page and read about what you expect to see at a pizza farm. That's kind of cool. And now also this link, this image behaves like a link here, and it just moves a little more smoothly, right? When I open this Replit page, my web page in a new tab. So that's why I just wanted to show that to you there. When you're working on a web page, it's nice to sort of see them side by side, but sometimes you may decide that you want to open it up in another browser tab. Okay. I'd ask you, is this the type of situation here where you want to indent for clarity like we did above when we indented our LIs here to show that they're part of the UL link? And that's a genuine question to you. As a new programmer, what do you think works best here? Do we indent for clarity, or the alternative would be just put it all in one line like this, and it has the same effect? And this is one case, the the unordered list and list items, everybody, that's sort of a common convention would be to indent the list items. Down here, for something like this type of nesting, I think you could go either way on this. You don't necessarily need to indent the IMG because there's not really like many items that need to be indented to show that there's some sophisticated nesting occurring like there is up here. In this case, just one. You could kind of go either way. Same thing down up here with the M tag that we started this video talking about. We don't need to bother. In fact, it may look a little weird if we go ahead and if we indent that like that. So I'm not gonna do it up there. Just Command Z, Control Z back out of that. And one thing that's bugging me a little bit here is, and I'm going to take a second in this video here to point this out, even though it's maybe a little bit of a sidetrack, is this whole structure is actually indented too far. There we go. That cleaned it up. And we'll do this here too. Everything was indented by one space on the page. It's just how I started the page, and that was kind of bugging me a little bit. So now our indents are a little clearer. We can see each of these list items is lined up nicely with the second UL that's in here, and then each of these are lined up nicely. And since I made this little fix, you can see now the purpose, the function of these vertical lines here. They're sort of tying the opening and the closing tags to each other, right? And so this line here ties our opening and our closing tag together. This is just human stuff, has nothing to do with the computer. We can do something really awkward like this. I'm totally messing up my page. Maybe even like that, and put a bunch of return to line breaks. I could do all that, and it's really messy code, hard to read, hard to see how many list items there are, but when I run it, the effect is exactly the same because of what I talked about in the last video. The browser renders multiple spaces or multiple line breaks just as a single space and doesn't interfere with the structure that way. So obviously, this is a really horrible way to code this type of list, and so I'm going to Command Z, Control Z back to my nice indenting, because my heart rate was going up a little too much there. And there we go. Now we have a nice indented list again. Okay, so that's what I wanted to show you about nested tags.